The topic for today is communication for academic purposes. And as part of it, we'll be discussing about academic writing. So when we say academic writing, it is a style of expression that teachers use to define the intellectual boundaries of their disciplines and specific areas of expertise. It is designed to convey a grid meaning about complex ideas or concepts for a group of scholarly experts. Apart from that, when we are academic writing, we propose claims or arguments that may be valid depending on the evidence that you are going to present. Then, when it comes to academic writing, we have the so-called stylistic elements, and these are overall view, language, academic tone, academic diction, and lastly, we have punctuation. Let's talk about overall view. Unlike journalistic or fiction writing, the overall structure of academic writing is formal and logical. Thus, it is important to take note that the paper must be cohesive and possess a logically organized flow of ideas. This suggests that the various parts are connected to form a unified whole. And then there should be transitional devices or narrative links between sentences and paragraphs so that the reader will be able to follow your argument. In any form of writing, transitional devices are important because it will establish the link from the previous event to the present event. Apart from that, the introduction should include as well an explanation of how the rest of the paper is organized, and all sources are properly cited throughout the paper. That's why we do have the citations for every evidence that we are going to use for academic writing. Next thing to it, we have language. Of research problems is in diverse disciplines is often complex and multidimensional. Hence, it is significant that you use language that fits your audience and matches your purpose. That's why inappropriate language uses
undermine,
argument, damage your credibility, or alienate your audience. For you not to arrive in alienation of your audience, damage to your credibility, and to your argument, you need to keep in mind that the key to successful writing focuses on the levels of formality and conciseness that underscores writing in a style that your audience expects and that fits your purpose. So whenever we are doing academic paper, we're not just writing for ourselves. We are writing for a specific audience. And most of the time, this audience could be part of the general public. That's why we need to be clear when it comes to the topic sentence, and we need to have well-structured paragraphs to enable readers to follow your line of thinking without difficulty. And then we should avoid as well in-group jargons or specialized language used by groups or like-minded individuals. You have to bear in mind that you only use in-group jargon when you are writing for members of that group. You should never use jargon for a general audience without first explaining it. Example, FBD, the free body diagram, could have a different meaning to different fields. That is the purpose of having definition of terms section as well as glossary for different researches, for us to cater the different meaning for a specific purpose. We should also avoid using slang or idiomatic expressions in general academic writing, as well as euphemisms and biased language. Why do we need to avoid such? Avoiding slang and idiomatic expression means that you are also exhibiting formality in academic writing, which is the prime characteristic of academic writing. Second, avoiding euphemism or words that veil the truth or deceitful language. We are forming academic writing. We are presenting evidences. Thus, we should not be deceitful, or we should not lie when it comes to the evidences that we are going to present. If we are going to use euphemisms, we are also damaging our credibility as a researcher. We should also avoid biased language, including language with racial, ethnic, group, or gender bias. Because this language is committed to stereotyping. And we don't want to cause stereotyping whenever we are into academic writing. Because though it is straightforward, though it should be concise, it should always be sensitive. Because academic writing is still a form of communication. And what do we say whenever we need or we want to have an effective communication? It should be ethical communication. And an ethical communication will only be ethical if that is sensitive to the readers or to the audience that it will cater. Third, we have academic tone. In academic tone, the overall tone refers to the writer's voice in the written work. It is what the readers might perceive as the writer's attitude, bias, or personality. So your writing do the talking for you when you are not there. So make sure to it that you will present arguments of others objectively and with appropriate narrative tone. Describe the arguments accurately and without bias or loaded language whenever you present an argument or position that you disagree with. An academic paper should be free from your emotion. And then you should also investigate the research problem from authoritative perspective and state strong points of your arguments confidently by using language that is neutral, not dismissive or confrontational. Though we are making researches, we are making academic papers for the sake of exposing the truth, for the sake of persuading someone with regards to our claims or to believe our claims or believe our arguments, it shouldn't be dismissive and confrontational. It should always be neutral. Then avoid making broad generalizations or using oversweeping adjectives, adverbs, qualifiers, emotional language, and inflammatory language. Whenever we are making an academic paper, it should direct an issue. It should resolve an issue and not to produce another problem out of it. Therefore, your words or your tone in the academic paper should be specific as much as possible. It will be then followed by academic diction. When we say academic diction, it refers to the linguistic choices a writer makes to effectively convey an idea or a standpoint. When writing in academic diction, you must take note that awareness of the words is vital. Awareness of the words you use is vital because it have almost the same denotation or dictionary definition to different again. So awareness of words is vital because these words can have different connotations or different implied meanings. So you should be aware on how you're going to use words in terms of your paper. And then use concrete and specific words to convey precise meaning. Explain what you mean within the context of how that word or phrase is used within a discipline. And then be consistent with your labels. Call people what they want to be called. Use gender-inclusive language and avoid placing gender identifiers in front of nouns. That's why we should be consistent with labels and as much as possible avoid placing gender identifiers in front of nouns. That's why whenever we are writing academically or whenever we are writing an academic paper, we are not using second person point of view. or we are sticking with the third person point of view. So yun ang pinaka-ginagamit natin whenever we are into academic writing. As I've mentioned a while ago, we should avoid slang expressions as well as cliche phrases, metaphors as part of figures of speech, then colloquialism, jargons, big words or highfalutin words, platitudes, and contractions. Therefore, we should avoid words that is used in informal register. Then, if you are going to use personal pronouns, you should avoid using I in your paper unless that is a reaction or reflection paper. So any other academic paper, you should use the third person point of view. Next thing to it, we have punctuation. So to establish the narrative tone of their work, scholars rely on precise words in language. Thus, punctuation marks are used very deliberately. First, punctuation mark natin ay semicolon. It represents a pause that is longer than a comma, but shorter than a period in a sentence. We are using semicolons when a second clause expands or explains first clause to describe the sequence of actions or different aspects of the same topic placed before clauses which begin with for instance, and even so, nevertheless, therefore, as well as to mark off a series of phrases or clauses which contain commas. And then, we are going to use columns naman if we are introducing, announcing, directing attention to a list, a noun or noun phrase, a quotation, or an example, explanation, as well as joining sentences and expressing time, titles, and other part of writing conventions. While hyphens can be used or should be used to connecting prefixes to words like multidisciplinary, face-to-face, and other compound phrases. Dashes should be limited to the insertion of explanatory comment in a sentence, and exclamation points are rarely used to express a hyphen tone because it can come across an unsophisticated or overexcitement. Let's now talk about academic conventions, because the most important aspect of academic writing is citing sources in the body of your paper and providing a list of references as either footnotes or endnotes. When considering academic conventions, here are the considerations. First is that it is essential to always acknowledge the source of any ideas, research findings, paraphrase or quoted text that you have used in your paper as a defense against allegations of plagiarism. Later on, I'll play a video regarding plagiarism as well as how you're going to avoid unintentional plagiarism. And then with reference to academic writing purposes, the guidelines for fair use are reasonably explicit. This means that you may quote from or paraphrase material from previously published works without formally obtaining the copyright holder's permission, as long as you will cite your reference, as long as you will mention the author. So now let me play the video for you.
Plagiarism is something we hear about often, but do we really know what it means? You might hear the word used by your professor as part of a warning and something you should avoid. But how do you do this? Let's take a look. First, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism occurs when a writer uses someone else's language, ideas, or other original material without acknowledging its source. Whether you intend to or not, you are stealing someone else's ideas. Here's an example. You're writing a paper for your English class and you find a great quote from a book that fits perfectly into your paper.
Yay!
You copy and paste the paragraph into your paper, but you don't give credit to the source. This is plagiarism. To avoid plagiarizing or passing someone else's intellectual property off as your own, be sure to include a citation after the quote. Plagiarism can be either intentional or unintentional, so we need to look at ways to avoid being an information thief. Here are 5 easy steps to help you avoid plagiarism. Number 1. Use original ideas and opinions. Write your own thoughts and explanations regarding your research topic. If you do need to use information from another source, be sure it is relevant. And if you do use it, make sure you cite it. Number 2. Paraphrase. When you're using information from a source, it's a good idea to put it into your own words. However, you still need to cite the source even though you're paraphrasing. Information that is common knowledge, for example, the sky is blue, does not need to be cited. Number 3. Cite your sources. As I've already said, you need to cite information that you get from a source. Whether it is from a book, journal article, blog, or website, you need to cite it. Here's an example of a citation. In the parentheses, you can see that both the publication year and page number are given. There are different ways of doing this depending on the citation style you're using. Sometimes it can be difficult to tell when a citation is needed. When in doubt, cite it. Number 4. Use quotation marks. If you're putting information into your paper that you took directly from a source, be sure to put quotation marks around that information. This tells the reader that you're quoting directly from your source.
Help!
Number 5. Ask for help. If you're just not sure when and how to cite your information, ask for help. There are several options available to you to get help with your citations. If you're on campus, you can visit ACE. ACE is Southeastern's Academic Center for Enrichment. You can also ask a librarian such as myself, and you can even use online tools such as Purdue OWL's website, which offers resources for both MLA and APA. You can also use Zotero. Zotero is a free tool which helps you collect, organize, and cite your sources. You can find more tutorial videos on our YouTube channel or visit us online at library.seu.edu.
Academic conventions, number 3 and number 4. So rules concerning precise word structure and excellent grammar do not apply when quoting someone. So to set off and represent exact language, either spoken or written, that has come from somebody else, is the primary function of quotation marks. Direct quotations involve incorporating another person's exact words into your own writing. And here are the reminders whenever you are using quotation marks. First is that quotation marks always paired. That means that when you use open quotation marks, you should use end quote or the closing quotation marks. Then the first letter of the direct quote should be capitalized whenever you are quoting a complete sentence. Then don't use capital letter when the quoted material is a fragment or piece of the original material's complete sentence only. And if direct quote is interrupted mid-sentence, do not capitalize the second part of the quotation. Apart from that, you should also note that the period or comma punctuation comes before the period or the comma. Quoting text with a spelling or grammar error, you should transcribe the error exactly in your own text. However, you should also insert the term in italics directly after the mistake and enclose it in brackets. So sic is the Latin and translates to thus, so, or just as that. The word tells the reader that the quote is an exact reproduction of what you found and the error is not your own. And when there is a quote within a quotation enclose the inner quote in single quotation mark and the whole quotation in double quotation marks. So kapag merong quotation mark within the material that you're going to quote, you will use single quotation mark for that quotation within the quotation. So direct quotations which run to less than 5 lines are integrated in the text and simply enclosed in quotation marks, just like what you are seeing right now. But quoted material that runs from 5 or more lines are indented 7 spaces, italicized, and typed single space. The quotation is also indented at least 4 spaces from the right-hand margin. And as you can see, we are no longer using quotation marks. Again, if the quoted part or the quoted material you are going to use is less than 5 lines, you are going to use quotation marks. But if that material is 5 lines or more, you can use this example wherein you will indent it 7 spaces tapos naka-italicize ang inyong 5 lines. So quotation marks are most effective if you use them sparingly and keep them relatively short. Because too many quotations in research will get you accused of not producing original thought or material. Because the scholarly convention of citing sources allows reader to identify the sources you need in writing your paper, so they can independently verify and assess the quality of findings and conclusions based on your review of literature. So most of the time, dun naman natin makikita ang citations sa review of literature. Why are we not using review of related literature? Kasi you put it or you include that literature in your study because that is related. Now, what you're going to do is to review the literature. Review on how it is connected to your study. That's why it should be review of the literature, not review of related literature. Next thing to it, we have evidence-based reasoning. Because coursework often asks you to express your own standpoint about the research problem. However, what is valued in academic writing is the viewpoints or opinions that are based or termed or are based on evidences. So this type of reasoning underscores a sound understanding of the pertinent body of language and academic debates that exist within and often external to your discipline. The need to support your opinion with evidence from scholarly sources and an objective stance presented in a logical argument. These are the qualities you need to include in your academic writing or in your academic paper. And then the quality of your evidence will determine the strength of your argument. But it doesn't mean na dadamihan ko evidence ko para strong yung argument ko. You should evaluate your arguments. You should evaluate your evidences. If those evidences are valid and if those evidences are credible. Kasi most of the time, we will see different literatures, we will see different sources, but these are unreliable sources. So, mas maganda yung konti yung nakita yung evidence, pero reliable. Kesa madami kang sources, yet unreliable. Because the challenge here is to convince the reader of the validity of your opinion through a well-documented, coherent, and logically structured piece of writing, which is particularly important when proposing solutions to problems or delineating recommended courses of action. What is the goal why we are doing academic writing? To resolve a particular problem or to address a certain issue. Thus, we have these two characteristics of evidence-based reasoning. First thing, it is thesis-driven. That means that academic writing follows or begins with a perspective, an idea, a position, which is applied to a chosen topic of investigation, such as publishing, proving, or disproving solutions to the research questions posed for the topic. And then a problem statement without the research questions doesn't qualify an academic writing because simply identifying the research problems does not establish for the reader how you will contribute to solving the problem, what aspects you believe are most critical, or suggest a method for gathering data to better understand the problem. That's why informing your topic or in choosing your topic, informing your thesis statement, you should leave the reader with a question. Kung ano ba yung mapapakinabang nila dun sa inyong solution na ipinopropose. Then, we have complexity and higher order thinking. Academic writing addresses multifaceted issues that require higher order thinking skills applied to understanding the research problem, such as creative, critical, logical, and reflective thinking as opposed to prescriptive or descriptive thinking. When considering complexity and higher order thinking skills, you must take note that cognitive processes that describe the abstract ideas cannot be easily shown with images pointed to or acted out, and they're used to express concepts to comprehend or to solve problems comprise higher order thinking skills. That's why in every graph or in every illustration, in every image that you're going to present in your academic paper, it should be backed up with explanation. Hindi po pwede maglalagay ka ng graph, ng mag-image without explaining kung ano ang relevance nun sa study mo. Hindi ka din naman po pwede maglagay na lang ng picture, maglagay na lang ng graph sa yung study just for the sake na mapadami yung pages. It should be related to your topic of discussion. And as a writer, you must adopt the role of a good teacher, wherein you will summarize complex information into a well-organized synthesis of ideas, concepts, and recommendations that contribute to better understanding of the research problem. And for you to do it, you need to have the ability to explain complexity in a way that is understandable and relatable to the topic being presented. Because that is the main purpose of academic writing. Examining and explaining the significance of complex ideas as clearly as possible. So you will explain the complex ideas in a simple way. And for you to do it, you need to refine your academic writing, which includes clear writing, excellent grammar, credible and scholarly sources, and consistent stylistic approach. What do we mean by those? First, when we say clear writing, thinking precedes the process of writing. So you will think before you write something. You will think over again on what you are going to include into your academic paper. Because good writers spend sufficient time distilling information and reviewing major points from the literature they have reviewed before creating their work. Writing detailed outlines can help you clearly organize your thoughts. Then we have our excellent grammar. It is called excellent grammar because we don't have such thing as perfect grammar. So generally, English grammar can be difficult and complex. Even the best scholars take many years before they have a command of the major points of good grammar. So you need to take the time to learn the minor and major points of good grammar to avoid presenting papers riddled with errors, and spend time practicing writing and seek detailed feedback from your professors, and group proofreading skills and proper punctuation can significantly improve academic writing. We have this credible and scholarly sources. Credibility is defined as the quality or power of inspiring belief. Credible sources, therefore, must be reliable sources that provide information that one can believe to be true. It is important to use credible sources in an academic research paper because your audience will expect that you have backed your assertions with credible evidence. Some of the best sources wherein you can find information includes your university library. We have our e-library, Google Scholar, wherein that provides a list of journal articles, portable document formats, web and websites, focusing on much more credible and scholarly sources appropriate for an academic research paper. We also have RefSeek, wherein it is a resource that allows you to research specifically for documents, giving you a better chance finding credible information to help you write your research paper, as well as Internet Public Library, a resource that allows you to search by subject. And then we also have Education Resource Information Center, which is a database that primarily focuses on education, but it also includes a number of related topics such as psychology, social work, and other social issues. Now, what are the sites or what are the sources that we should avoid whenever we are doing our academic research? So, una doon is the dictionary. It is a good source. However, it could not provide you with more specialized definition of terms needed in an academic paper. Look for the meaning of that word in a field where it is used, not just in a dictionary. Because the dictionary will give you the generalized definition for it. And it is a research paper, therefore, you need the specialized definition. Next is the about.com. It can provide useful information such as novel ideas and information related to fashion, health, sports, entertainment, and the like. However, such information is irrelevant to academic research writing. Lastly, we have Wikipedia or other wikis that are also good websites. However, the problem is that anyone can write and edit them. Hence, you cannot vouch for the credibility of the given information because you cannot assure that a professional or an expert in that field wrote that particular information. Consistent stylistic approach. So whenever you are writing, make sure to stick with your stylistic approach. If you begin with APA or the American Psychological Association style, stick with it. If you will use MLA or the Modern Language Association style, stick with it. If you're going to use Chicago Manual style, stick with it. Choose a style and stick to it. It depends upon the preference of the university, your professor, as well as the field you are working on. Because each of these styles guides provide rules on how to write out numbers, references, citations, footnotes, and links. Consistent adherence to a style of writing helps with the narrative flow of your paper and improves its readability. Let's now talk about academic papers. So we have here three academic papers: socio-political analysis paper, position paper, and research-based documented essay. But what is the function of each academic paper? For socio-political analysis paper, it is an analysis of the economic, social, and political factors that shape a particular country or situation and how these factors impact the lives and thoughts of the people. Therefore, when we are doing socio-political analysis paper, we are exposing the situation, we are exposing the impacts to the lives and thoughts of the people. And then we have position paper. It describes the author's or organization's position on an issue and the rationale for that position. So this one is argumentative essay because it could break the status quo. And at the same time, you will argue that your position is valid. You will argue that your position is vital. Then for research-based documented essay, authors incorporate information such as text, arguments, and opinions taken from the writings of authorities in a particular field. Now, what is the similarity of research-based documented essay to socio-political analysis paper and position paper? So just like socio-political paper, this research-based documented essay is expository and it's also argumentative and persuasive, just like a position paper. All these academic papers are supported with evidences because all academic papers should not just be based on your opinion. The reason it is called as academic paper is because you are going to find out a new information. You need to gain new learning out of it. All academic papers are divided into three parts: the introduction, body, and conclusion. Wherein your introduction should always be clear, your body is well organized, and your conclusion should be a strong standpoint. Let's have the differences for each academic paper. For political analysis paper, just like what I've mentioned, it will always have these three parts: clear introduction, well-organized body, and strong conclusion. But for the socio-political analysis paper, you need to state the problem, the thesis, and the roadmap. What do we mean by problem, thesis, and roadmap? When we say problem, it refers to the wider subject or question you are trying to address. While thesis is the argument or your claim that you will prove all throughout your paper. Your thesis statement, that is the thesis. And then roadmap, it is the plan that flows the thesis statement. It operates like a preview of the paper's main points, which is presented in logical order. Then we have the well-organized body. So for you to have this well-organized body, you need to present evidences. You need to present your claim and defend it with detailed evidences. And you must follow the roadmap that you have presented in the introduction. We have strong conclusion. In forming your strong conclusion, which is the last component of your paper, you should restate the main ideas, summarize the main concept or key arguments of your paper. But you shouldn't repeat the whole body or introduction of your paper. Apart from that, a strong conclusion should answer the problem that you have posed or the thesis that you have posed in the introduction. Next, we have position paper. Position paper, do you have this clever hook, identified issue, and author's position? So clever hook, that means that on the first paragraph of your introduction, it should catch your reader's attention. In position paper, as I've mentioned, it is argumentative and persuasive. So dun pa lang sa introduction mo, dapat ma-convince mo ang iyong reader that they need to hear you out, that they need to read your paper. Then it will be followed by your identified issue. What issue are you addressing? Or what problem are you trying to solve? Then your position, author's position. It should end with, your introduction should end with a solid thesis statement, which expresses your position on the topic. So the thesis statement essentially serves as a mini outline for the paper. Then we have the well-organized body, which is the nerve center of the paper. In here, you will develop your thesis and defend it with detailed evidences as well, just like what you have done for your socio-political analysis paper. And after providing brief introduction regarding the problem, or but for the continuity of information from the introduction, you also need to present your evidences in a logical way. So you need to present your claim, then evidence, claim, evidence. That will be the sequence for the body. And as for the conclusion, restate the idea, summarize the main concept, and answer the question that you have posted. Next, we have the research-based documented essay. In research-based documented essay, we also have the same characteristic for the position paper, which is the clever hook, identified issue, and author's position. Because in research-based documented essay, you need to convince the reader that your idea, your argument is valid. And how are you going to do that? By presenting evidences. So EV here stands for evidence. It can only be called well-organized body once you have presented your argument and supported it with at least 2 evidences. So you will present your first argument. After presenting your first argument, you can back it up with your second argument. And then your second argument can also be backed up with your third argument. But each time that you will add an argument, it should always be supported with at least 2 evidences. And you may also produce the counter argument. And that, what do we mean by counter argument? These are the loopholes in your arguments. So you need to answer also the loopholes, the possible loopholes that your reader will find, and present evidences that these loopholes are no longer valid. So in your concept paper, in your research-based documented essay as your final requirement, I stated there that you should choose at least 1 argument. That means that you will choose 1 argument out of your thesis statement or out of the problem that you have discussed and present at least 2 evidences for it to be called valid. Then, what will be the purpose of surveys for your research-based documented essay? It will serve as your springboard. Because without the springboard, without your survey, how are you going to tell, or how are you going to expose to me that your claim is valid? Because whenever we are citing evidences, it shouldn't be just mere opinions. And for you to do it, you need to have first-hand information. And we can only acquire first-hand information through doing the survey. Next is we need to have the strong conclusion. As part sa inyong research-based documented essay ng final requirement, you have there the limitation to 250 words. But you can still exceed it, pero wag naman sana aabot ng 1,000 words para sa conclusion. Kasi conclusion, it is the capsulate ideas of your paper. And there you have it. We have the academic papers. Now let's discuss about the APA 7th edition with the most notable changes. This was taken from online thesis statistician and from Scriber. So una sa changes that we have is that publisher location is not included. Because the publisher location is one of the most difficult information to find for students. That's why they opt out not to include publisher. In-text citations are shortened. So instead of stating Taylor, Cutler, Johnson, Parker 2018, we only use Taylor et al. 2018. Yes, we are already using et al. 2018. Pero ano ba yung proper usage ng et al. Na ito? At sino ba talaga yung name na ilalagay mo dito? Or sinong author ba ang ilalagay mo dito? And as you can see, it's not arranged alphabetically. Why not Cutler instead of Taylor? The answer is that the first name or the first author's name that appears in the list of authors means that person is the main author of the book, of the article. That's why i-acknowledge natin siya in our citation as the main author. Third, for up to 20 authors in the reference list, surnames and initials for up to 20 authors instead of 7 should be provided in the reference list. If a source is authored by more than 20 authors, only the first 19 authors and the last author are included. And in between the 19th and the last author, you're going to place an ellipse to indicate that names are omitted. And what is the ellipsis? These 3 dots is the so-called ellipsis. Next, DOIs are formatted as URLs. So most journal articles and books have DOI, or the digital object identifier assigned to them. So this unique link is stable and makes retrieving a source easier for readers. But right now, DOIs are formatted the same as URLs because the label DOI is no longer used. Then in citing web pages, URLs are no longer preceded by retrieve from unless a retrieval date is needed. And the website name is included unless it's the same as the author. And as you can see, web page titles are italicized. Citing ebooks. For ebooks, the format, platform, or device is no longer included in the reference. In this sense, we have Kindle version. And dun sa ating bagong format, it's no longer included. But it was replaced by the publisher. So instead of the platform, we are replacing it with the publisher. Next, for contributors other than the authors, or pag gumamit tayo ng film, TV series, podcast episode, webinar, online streaming video, or photograph as a reference, these persons will replace the place of the author. A film. So the director for that particular film will be reflected as the first segment for your reference. So the role of the contributor is added in parentheses after their name. For example, is that Jones or Jones PD. After that, we are choosing director. So kung dito, si Brooke, ang gagawin, si Brooke 2000, ang ating director. After ng Brooke meron tayong naka-open and close parenthesis dito na director, then saka pa yung 2009. That is how you're going to write it. Next is that using singular they. Because as I've mentioned a while ago, research papers or academic paper should always be written in the third person point of view. That's why we are avoiding he, his, or her. Apart from that, it should be gender neutral. And the only gender neutral that we can use is they and their. A grammar mistake, but we can revise the sentence to make it passive, to make it proper. Next is that be sensitive to labels. Again, though research papers or academic papers are direct to the point when it comes to the presentation of ideas, it should always be sensitive. So just like indicating before, we should label them as people living in poverty and transsexuals as transgender people. And the appropriate level of specificity. So instead of over 65s, we are specifying that the age bracket. So over 65s, so that is people aged 65 to 75. Asian participants. Who are these Asian participants? You need to be particular. You need to be specific. Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Thai participants. Apart from that, we also have more fonts to choose from. Before, we only have Times New Roman and Arial with 12 and 11 font size respectively. But right now, we already have Georgia, Calibri, and Lucida Sans Unicode with 11 font size and 10 font size. Next, there's no more running head. And what do we mean by running head? Running head is the title above the paper. Then we have updated heading styles. Back then, kapag naglalagay kayo ng table number at saka table title, hindi siya naka-bold, hindi siya naka-italicized. But in the new update, it is now written in this way, wherein all headings are now bold and in title case. So either this way, ay pwede ninyong gamitin in writing the title or in writing the heading style. And that will be all.